And we are live. Hello everybody, my name is Susie Ashworth and I am co-founder of the Calm Birth School, the world's first online video-based hypnobirthing course, and it is our mission to help create calm and positive births right across the world. Today I am very honoured to be able to introduce to you the wonderful Dr Joanna Helcke, who is going to be joining the Calm Birth School team really in just a couple of weeks' time with her own online Pilates. I was going to say school, it's not quite a school, but an online Pilates course that is works for women from 14 weeks of pregnancy right the way through to 6 months when their children are 6 months. So Joanna, welcome to the Calm Birth School and what will be, I'm sure, a wonderful masterclass on all that is Pilates.
Well, thank you very much.
So, Joanna, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came to be doing what you're doing?
Well, I'm Joanna Helcke, and I started off with a completely different career many moons ago. And then, like many people, I ended up having children, and that completely changed my perspective on things. And basically what happened was that after my second birth, I sort of started exercising. It was a funny little story. A leaflet landed on my doorstep and I picked it up and thought, yeah, I think I'll join that gym. And it was transformational. It really, really had a huge impact on me, and it made me feel, well, I was going to say 100% better, but it was actually more than that. It was phenomenal. And so basically, after my third son, I thought, okay, I'll just do a little fitness qualification because I'd had a career break. And I thought, oh, that's quite good fun. And then I did another one, and then I went full-time, and I became a student full-time again when I was in my 30s. And I thought, well, I know what I want to do. This has been incredibly helpful for me as a mum. I want to specialise in pregnancy and postnatal fitness, and I want to pass that on to as many other people as I can. And so I went off to London and I qualified and specialised in pregnancy postnatal fitness, and off I went and set up a business, first at a local level. I am based in Leicestershire. And then after a couple, well, 2 or 3 years, I started to think, hang on a sec, you know, let's think a bit bigger than this. I want to pass this on to a lot more people. And I started working on setting up something that really would be accessible to anyone, wherever she is and at any time, really, which is a bit like what you're doing. It's open there for everyone, regardless of geographical location, etc.
So what was it when you were having your pregnancies, and you say kind of it was quite transformational for you, actually getting into exercise and fitness. What was that transformation? What was that about?
Okay, well, I had my first 2 children quite close together, well, reasonably close together. They were 17 months apart. So
Whoa!
It was really so it was very much a case of kind of pregnant, breastfeeding, pregnant again, pregnant and breastfeeding, and I had 3 solid years of this, and I mean, frankly, I found it quite hard going, you know. And
Really?
yeah, well, it was hard. And so what the exercise did for me, it was like this enormous, it's an incredibly useful tool in my toolkit. It just enabled me to cope a lot better. So I used to sort of get ups and downs. I used to sort of think, oh dear, I can't cope. And somehow the exercise really grounded me, and it just made me feel so much better, and so much more positive, and so much happier. I mean, honestly, I think, you know, if there's one word I'd use, it's happiness. I felt able to manage better and much happier, and so that's what I mean when I say transformational.
Yeah, that's amazing. So, and I think it's something that before you get pregnant, particularly if you're not into fitness, you hear about people talking about endorphins and, you know, the lift. But I think that hearing it in that context, so you having had your children close together, which 17 months is intense. My children are 23 months apart. 17 months for me is just like, whoa. And you do get those down days. And you do have those times when you feel overwhelmed. So I'm guessing that you had, when you were doing your exercise, that was time that was just for you, where you were able to just have some of your own space and focus on the feelings that you get when you can get some of those endorphins rushing through your body.
Yes, definitely. I mean, basically, I call it a little bubble of peace. And I still have and still need that bubble of peace now. And I use it regularly. You know, the children are, well, my oldest is now 15, but that I still need to have those little moments. And actually, they're not, to be honest, they're not even reflective moments. I'm literally able to zone everything out. I don't really think about anything much. And I think that as mums, and working mums as well, I mean, either way, you know, you are managing and juggling an awful lot of things. You know, you're sort of thinking about children's packed lunches, and you're thinking about your work, and everything is all jumbled up in your head. And exercise somehow, because you have to focus on it, and because it's physically demanding, it just means that you get that mental space, because you don't have the opportunity whilst you're exercising really to start sort of, it gives that break. It might be, you know, for some people meditation would be an alternative, and for me it's more the exercise and being physically active that does it.
Sure. So you are the Pilates queen. So my title to you. How did you get into Pilates? What was it about that mode of exercise that lit you up?
Well, I have to say I like all sorts of other exercise as well. I just love exercise, so I really love all sorts of other things. And I think that everyone should do what they love and they enjoy. I think that's really, really important. As for Pilates, I see it as an amazingly useful tool when it comes to the niggles in life. So many of us have back pain, and then in pregnancy we end up with all sorts of other aches and pains and areas of tension and tightness, pelvic pain. And the reason I like Pilates is because it really, really can help. And it just is an incredibly useful tool to have in your fitness kit bag. I always say to people, you know, it's not, should I either do one exercise or another one? You know, bring them together. Don't do one to the exclusion of another. So I think that that Pilates is definitely something that people should try and include into their weekly portfolio of fitness, but alongside the cardio and the strength, because you know, you need it to be balanced, and so you want to have those other elements as well. But definitely Pilates gives you that core stability. It helps with the posture. It helps particularly with getting the abdominals back postnatally, and massively with back pain. I mean, that is just, it constantly comes back to me, you know, the mum saying, you know, oh dear, you were off last week and my back pain came back, and I find that amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to ask you why Pilates in particular is so good for the prenatal period, but I'm guessing that a lot of what you've just said is relevant to that.
Yes, hugely so. But I think that you have to make a distinction between Pilates, which is just your normal Pilates, which is the way it was conceived, which was for everybody, and pregnancy Pilates, because you know, when Joseph Pilates created Pilates, it wasn't a system designed for pregnant or postnatal women. It was designed to make him really strong and to make him an athlete. And there are all sorts of moves and positions and exercises which are just completely inappropriate once you get beyond the first trimester of pregnancy. So it is actually really important that people don't just think, oh, I'm pregnant, let me do Pilates, off I go, and then they go and do, they must go to something that is with somebody who specializes in pregnancy Pilates and who can adapt all the way through.
Sure.
That's really, and postnatally as well.
Okay. What are the key benefits of Pilates in the prenatal period and then the postnatal period?
Well, as I alluded to earlier on, I think back pain is one of the key factors. It really, I mean, if you look in terms of nationally, the number of hours that are lost per year and the impact on the economy when it comes to back pain, if we can help manage that, then that's hugely important. And back pain is exacerbated enormously in pregnancy because of the postural changes and with the tilting of the pelvis and your bump and your center of gravity moving. And so that is, I mean, certainly one thing that I think is really key. The other one is postural, and that is, of course, linked to back pain, because if you've got poor posture, then in turn that's going to have a negative impact on your back. So because the posture changes in pregnancy, Pilates, you can't, you can't stop that from happening, but you can at least try and temper that with Pilates. And that is just, it's kind of like I would say to people in my classes, today it's your weekly postural reminder. It's just a weekly, okay, let's just focus on posture again, and then hopefully people take that with them and they carry it with them through their day, through their week, whilst they're sitting, whilst they're standing, and it will just protect them against back pain. So that's antenatally, but that also is important postnatally, because if you think about it, postnatally you haven't got a bump, but you've got a baby, and not only that, you're doing a lot of lifting, a lot of carrying, you've got a baby in your arms, you're feeding, you're picking prams out of cars, you're doing an awful lot of physical maneuvers that you would never have done prior to your pregnancy. And it does, and not only that, your baby is growing and getting heavier. So all in all, postnatally, women do suffer quite a lot from back pain, even if they've never had it before in their lives. So what Pilates does postnatally is that it really, really helps in terms of just building that core strength, the deep layer of abdominals, because the abdominals inevitably get stretched and lengthened and weakened in pregnancy. And then postnatally, you need to get that all back together again. And Pilates, if done properly, postnatal Pilates will really, really help with that.
Sure. Okay. So posture and back pain are kind of two of the key benefits. I think we can't go on
and the whole mummy tummy thing, people get very hung up on what their abdominals look like, let alone the fact that having weak abdominals means you haven't got a protected back. But also people, when they look at their bodies postnatally, if there's one thing that they sort of think, oh dear,
jelly
now that
belly.
really, they kind of go, oh dear, that really has changed. And then they often rummage around in their sort of portfolio of exercises for the abdominal area, and of course they pick out the one exercise that they think of, which is sit-ups, and off they go doing their sit-ups up and down, and potentially for many, many women, if they have an abdominal separation, sit-ups are absolutely the wrong exercise to be doing, and they will actually be exacerbating the whole mummy tummy problem rather than solving it.
So could you just explain for our viewers what abdominal separation is?
Yes. Okay. So basically, you have 4 layers of abdominal muscles. You've got the deepest layer, which is the one that I suppose at the moment people refer to as your core. You've got the obliques, which kind of wrap round the whole of the tummy area and then wrap into your back as well. So they're like a bit like a corset. And then over the top, you've got what I always refer to as the 6-pack layer. So it's a layer that, when you see those sort of fitness magazines and you see the muscly tummy, that you've got that top layer. Now, one of the sort of misconceptions is that when people talk about abdominal separation, they often refer to it as a split. It's not a split, it's just a separation, and it's only a separation of that very top layer of muscle. So all the other layers are intact.
Yeah.
So people do get very worried and a bit upset, and they go, "Oh dear, you know, I've got a hole." But it's not. It's just that top layer. But nevertheless, that top layer can separate out. It happens to the majority of women to
Okay.
varying degrees. So between 60 and 70% of women will get that. And it separates from the sternum down to the pubic bone. So it's lengthways. And then postnatally, it starts to basically it starts to zip up from the sternum down towards your belly button and from the pubic bone up towards your belly button. So that's the way it starts to close. Um, the abdominals start to realign postnatally. But
Yeah.
if you go and do all the wrong exercises, and by that I mean crunches, sit-ups, that those ones that people do where they do that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
sort of rotational work, side planks, all of that kind of traditional abdominal work, that can actually positively pull it all apart again and stop it from coming together.
No
So
way.
it's actually better in some ways to practically do nothing than to be doing all the wrong stuff. But there are lots
That
of exercises you can do which will actually help it come together again.
that is so good to know. That is vital information that I am sure the majority of us have absolutely no idea that we can be doing more harm than good postnatally by doing all of those exercises. I'm sure I did all of those exercises after I'd had my after I probably didn't do it with the second one, but certainly after the first one.
And for some people,
um,
for some people, it will be okay to do that because
yeah,
they've barely got a separation and the abdominals just haven't come up, they haven't separated out. But for others, it really can be detrimental. Uh, and so the first thing you do postnatally is, or that I do, is to actually show people how to check their abdominals. Some people will have been aware in pregnancy, they will have noticed something slightly odd.
yeah,
I normally give the example of lying down in a bath. So this might ring a bell to your pregnant ladies. If they're lying down in a bath and then at the end of the bath they heave themselves out of the bath, and as they lift themselves up, they might notice their abdominals sort of peeking up. So they come up into a sort of funny cone shape. It's quite a strange. You wouldn't miss it if it happened to you. You know that you know what I mean, basically, and that is because the abdominals have separated out, and what's happened is that you're trying to use the abdominals to lift yourself out of the bath,
yeah.
and they can't stabilize because they've separated, and so they poke upwards into that shape like that, like a
Okay.
cone. And postnatally, it's the same thing. If somebody were to do a sit-up with highly separated abdominals, the abdominals will poke up and they will dome, and that means they're not stabilizing.
I bet I've still got that. I'm going to check afterwards. I'm going to do a sit up and I'm going to check. How long does it last for?
That is as long as a piece of string.
Mm.
So basically it depends. I show people how to check, and you measure in how many fingers you can actually fit into the gaps. Is it one? Is it two? Is it three? And you measure above the belly button and you measure below the belly button.
Okay.
And and so basically, according to your measurements, you then know what exercise you can do and should do, and what exercises you should not be doing. And this is what I show people. And if people have a substantial gap, and by that I mean more than two fingers, and also between that gap, so when you stick your fingers in, if it feels all squishy and soft, and basically that there's no sort of strength there, then you know that you really do need to be doing some deep core abdominal work to get that all together again and to get it strong.
So you go through all of this with your in-person clients, but do you also go through this on your online course as well?
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. So postnatally, in the first, because basically in formal classes, you wouldn't be able to head off to the gym a week after giving birth. But my online program actually carries on from week one of the postnatal period. And what I do is I give people all this kind of information in video. So people could, for example, sit and feed and watch how to check their abdominals,
Yeah.
or watch how to, the whole sort of story of why abdominals separate, why you shouldn't be doing this or that exercise. Yes, definitely, I go through all of that. It's really
Fab.
important.
Okay, we cannot have this conversation without talking about pelvic floors. Talk to me about why what you do is so important for our pelvic floors.
Okay, yes, it's got to be done. I've got to talk about it. Okay, the problem is that everybody finds the pelvic floor really boring.
Yeah.
and they and they don't put it into the general category of exercise. It's not like I'm going to do my bicep curls and my pelvic floor.
Yeah.
So, but the pelvic floor is absolutely essential. And the way I try and describe it to people when I'm sort of trying to explain to them how to build up their fitness postnatally is that I say, if you imagine a tower, building a great big tower block, if you if you have shaky foundations, then that tower block is going to fall down at some point. Now, your pelvic floor is the base, it's the foundation of your fitness. So you've got to get that right first, get the pelvic floor strong and keep it strong, and then you build up all the other layers of fitness above it. So the pelvic floor basically is like a hammock of muscle. Or maybe a trampoline, depending on how strong your pelvic floor is. But it's a sling of muscle that goes from your pubic bone to your bottom, to your tailbone. And if you imagine, I always give this image, and it's not very nice, but if you imagine that your torso is effectively like a shopping bag, okay, and the pelvic floor is the bottom of that shopping bag, and inside
Yeah.
the shopping bag, you've got all your
I
internal
get it.
organs. Yeah? So
Mm.
you've got all those internal organs being held up by your pelvic floor. Now, in
Yeah.
pregnancy, obviously, that shopping bag's getting very heavy and very full.
Yeah.
And so there's an awful lot of weight bearing down on your pelvic floor. And your pelvic floor has a really tough old time right the way through pregnancy. So, and I say that because a lot of people who have a cesarean say things like, and I hear it all the time, they say, well, I'm fine, my pelvic floor's fine because I had
Yeah.
a cesarean. And
Yeah.
so what I want to impress on people is that no, the pelvic floor needs to be looked after really carefully postnatally, even if you've had a cesarean, because you had all that weight for 9 months bearing down, plus you had the hormonal changes, and so it's had a tough time. And also, if you've had an emergency cesarean, in some ways you've had the worst of all worlds, because you'll have had all the labor and everything, and then at the last minute you've had to have an operation as well. So basically, it is important to not ignore the pelvic floor, and preferably to do your pelvic floor exercises through pregnancy and to start up. They do say, but the problem is they usually tell you about a minute after you've given birth, when your mind is kind of slightly absorbed by something else along the lines of your baby. But they do tell you to do your pelvic floor exercises immediately after having given birth.
Yeah.
And things have moved on quite significantly in recent years in terms of pelvic floor exercises. So it used to be just kind of you and I now sitting here, off we go, we can do our pelvic floor
Yeah.
exercises. We
I'm
just
doing mine
pull,
now.
there we are, yeah, and I am as well. I can pull up and release, and it's hold for longer and
Yeah.
release, and then you do long ones and short ones. But now the thinking is, and this is based on it's evidence-based, it's based on research, is that it's far better to integrate those pelvic floor exercises into certain movements. And this is because the pelvic floor works very well in conjunction with the glutes, with your bottom muscles, and with other muscles as well. So there are certain exercises like squats and lunges and various other exercises which work really well because the pelvic floor will effectively fire up better and more strongly, more effectively when integrated into those exercises. So that's quite nice news because pelvic floor exercises are boring.
Yeah.
Squats and lunges are working the legs and the bottom, which we all like to work.
Yeah, it's all about the bums, legs and tongues, isn't it? So yeah, I get that. Fine. So, and we recommend that our clients are doing their pelvic floors twice a day. If you're integrating them with your exercises in that way, do we still need to be thinking about them twice a day, or, you know, is 3 times a week, is that going to be helpful? What's the latest research suggesting?
In terms of how often, I don't think the guidelines have really changed. But there are certain things that you can do which, instead of feeling that you have to set time aside to do your pelvic floor exercises, you can integrate it into certain movements. And I went on a physio course recently, and one of the best things I took away from that course was about something called the knack, an exercise called the knack. Now, the knack is effectively integrating a pelvic floor pull-up every time you go from sitting to standing and from standing to sitting. Now, if you think about it, it's one of the most common moves that we do every day, and it is a squat. Yeah, I mean, when you get out of a chair, you know, you're lifting yourself up from the squat position. When you lower yourself, you're squatting as well. And basically, the knack is having the knack of coordinating all of that together. So you need to be able to relax the pelvic floor whilst you're seated. So you do that with a breath in and an exhale. And then you breathe in again. And then as you exhale, you lift yourself up, you stand up, and at the same time you pull up on your pelvic floor. So you're kind of coordinating the movement with the pelvic floor. I can see you doing it there.
I'm doing it.
And then when you're standing, you would do exactly the same thing. You would relax your pelvic floor, and then you would take that breath in, and then as you exhale, draw up on your pelvic floor as you sit down. So you do it in reverse.
Okay. So once you've got the hang of the knack, you can be doing that all day, every day, more or less.
Exactly.
Which is good.
And then, you're then not having to consciously put time aside whilst brushing your teeth or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think, because a lot of our ladies, they are all over the prenatal yoga. What do you think, because obviously you said that posture is quite a big thing and back pain is quite a big thing, which I know that a lot of our women go to yoga for. So I'm just wondering, what are the key differences between Pilates and prenatal yoga? Would there be, aside from personal preference, any reason why you might choose one over the other?
Okay, well, for a start, let me lay my cards on the table. I specialise in Pilates, and I'm not a yoga specialist. So those are my cards.
Yeah.
There's a lot of crossover, I think. So I think a lot of the stuff I said about posture stands for yoga as well. It's very good as well for areas of tightness. So, you get that stretching, opening out of the chest area. All these things you'll find both in Pilates and in yoga. The core stability side, obviously, Pilates is going to be focused more on that because that is what it was developed for. That's why, dancers go off and do an awful lot of Pilates. It's all that the idea that everything comes from the core, all your movement comes from the core, and so that's where you need to keep it strong. Now, bearing in mind that when we're pregnant, that's the area that gets weak, then you can start to see the logic of trying to at least maintain tone, and this will help you recover postnatally more quickly. So from that perspective, I think that's where Pilates comes in. Yoga, you've got I didn't do yoga during pregnancy, and really what I ought to do is go along and learn about it by going to somebody's classes. But I think that you've got all the preparation for labour side of things, and the breathing techniques, and the relaxation and the calming side of things. And I think that that's really, really positive and beneficial, because people do get anxious potentially about labour, and also most people, when they're pregnant, they're also working full time, they're very busy, and anything that can just be a calming influence every week, a little moment of peace and quiet and relaxation, has to be a really, really good thing. The breathing, I think, is key. Pilates has breathing for the exercises, but yoga very much focuses on breathing for labour, for delivery, and that's going to be hugely important.
Yeah, massively. I mean, it's nice, they complement each other. What we do and what people learn in their yoga classes, they complement each other very, very well.
Yes, I can see that. Yeah, yeah. So I mean, all Pilates teachers are different, and some Pilates instructors will most definitely incorporate relaxation into their classes. I am who I am, and I know what suits me and what I'm good at. And basically, I do relaxation through movements that I know sort of will relax areas of the body that get tense, and that's because that suits my personality better. Me waffling on about sort of your body being like a feather is not going to work, so I don't do it. I leave that to the people who are that way inclined. I can't do it.
So, Jo, can you give us, obviously everybody should seek medical advice before they kind of embark on any new movement or exercise, but can you give us a couple of suggestions that might be good for our viewers who maybe 2 for people who are pregnant, and then 2 exercises for people postnatally that they can, that are quite safe to do?
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit difficult without actually being able to show you them. Yeah, I mean, there are certainly quite a few chair-based. I think when people are pregnant, a lot of people have desk jobs, and so one of the problems is they get tension through the shoulders, through the neck, and they get lower back pain. And there are certain things that you can do while seated at your desk, and I think that you have license when you're pregnant to just do those moves at your desk, and nobody's going to complain. And it's just things like, for example, linking your hands together. Can you see me? So linking your hands together in front of your body, dropping your chin down to your chest, and rounding through your whole spine. So it's just, I can't do it, so I can't show you really here, but it's just a stretching through the upper back, lengthening through the spine and through the neck as well. So that sort of thing, and also rotational moves. So you're looking over your shoulder and just rotating like this, and just getting that movement through the spine. And pelvic tilts, I have to say that because you get that tension in the lower back, that really, really builds up as the day goes on. So even at your desk, just tilting your pelvis under so that you're tilting backwards with the pelvis and stretching through your lower back, that's really helpful. I don't think that most people are allowed to take a fit ball or a birthing ball and actually sit on it at their desk. I think that most workplaces say no for health and safety reasons. But ideally, on a birthing ball, and then tucking the pelvis under, tilting under, stretching the lower back, and then coming back up again, or doing nice circular rotational movements through the pelvis, really, really helpful in pregnancy. Now, postnatally,
and then
Yeah, postnatally, all of those things apply because people still build up all that tension, and with all the feeding, whether it's bottle or breast, you're still having to hold your little one, and a lot of people forget to use all the cushions to prop their baby up, and so they're hunching downwards. So all of those movements that I just suggested there are also perfect postnatally. But then people also want to start to think about just beginning to work the deep abdominals in a very gentle way. So one thing that I get people to do is if they go onto all fours, so they're in a box position, they've got their hands underneath their shoulders, their knees underneath their hips, they need to just gently feel that they're lifting their abdominals up away from the floor, so they're lifting up, and then all you need to do is just literally hover one hand off the floor an inch, hold it there without wobbling around, drop it back down, lift the other hand up, and just hover that an inch, and all the while using the abdominals to stabilize yourself. And you just keep swapping over. Now, the only thing I would say is if somebody has checked their abdominals and they have really quite a big gap, then being in an all fours position isn't necessarily great, because if you think about it, gravity is actually going to pull downwards on that gap. So then they need to be thinking about doing exercises that are probably on their back instead.
Okay. Can I ask you a question, Jo? A bit of a weird one.
Go for it.
Are you supposed to sweat? Like in some Pilates classes, will you sweat? Because I've been to a couple in my time, just a couple, and they weren't very sweaty. And I just wonder whether they're all like that or whether you do sometimes build up a little bit of it.
It's it's not a cardiovascular exercise,
No.
so you're not going to build your stamina.
Yeah.
You will build strength. So
Yeah.
what people say to me is they say this really frequently. Actually, they say it's very funny. When I'm doing the class, it doesn't feel too bad, and it doesn't feel sweaty, and I'm not breathless. And then the next day I get up and I'm like, oh dear, ouch, that hurts.
Sure. Okay.
So in other words, they are working, but it's not a sweaty working. You're not leaping around, which anyway is not what you want to be doing postnatally.
No, it's not what I wanted to be doing. We're coming to the end now, Jo, so I just wanted to say thanks so much for such a fab talk. It's been brilliant. Thank you.
It's a pleasure.
How can our viewers get in contact with you? I know that you're going to be doing the bonus video for the Calm Birth School, which is amazing, but for people that would love to work with you further and be able to enjoy 60 videos or however many videos you've created, how can they do that?
Well, basically, if they just pop over to see me on my website, so they can find me on Facebook as well, but otherwise my website is just my name, so it's just joannahelcke.com, and if they just pop over, they can have a little look around. There's a lot of information on there as well in terms of things like back pain and pelvic pain, so there's a lot of stuff designed simply to help people there and then. And they can also just try the system, try the program for a couple of weeks for free, see what they think of it. And then if they want to come along and sign up, then there I am. There's a closed Facebook group as well, so a bit like you have, and there's a forum. So it's very much about creating a community as well. It's about connecting people. The exercise is really important, but socializing is as well, because that's put those two together and it makes for a happy person.
For sure. Well, thank you once again. It's been really informative. It's been great. Thank you so much.
It's an absolute pleasure, and just a reminder, everyone, pelvic floor exercise.
Do your pelvic floors.
Exactly. Not sexy, but got to be done.
Okay, Jo, thank you. And we'll be speaking really, really soon.
Yeah, it's a complete pleasure. Thank you for having me on here. It's been really good fun.
Yeah, it has been. All right, my lovely. Take care.
You too. Take care.
For
Bye
everybody
bye.
who's been watching, thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you in a couple of weeks' time for your next masterclass. All right, take care. Thank you. Bye bye.